Hi, folks, and thanks for sticking it out to the end. This is the American Eel in Gwilla Estrada. I have some facts about the natural history I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the study we do at the Wertheim Wildlife Refuge. American eels are a very long-lived species. They can live for more than 20 years. They're a very important bait species. They could be used as striped bass bait. They migrate, and one of the problems at large hydroelectric plants is that when they're migrating downstream, they can get killed in the turbines. And dams themselves can prevent them from migrating. And toxins in the environment, such as PCBs, can affect their fertility and survival. There's been a swim bladder parasite. It's a nematode that invades the swim bladders. It was originally from, it came over from Asia, I believe, and it can prevent them from being able to migrate properly. Eels have been declining. Fishing has been banned in Ontario and Canada since 2004, and in America they're currently under petition to be listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. Eels, you may have heard, they're called catadromous. Catadromous means down running, and it means that they spend most of their lives in fresh water. They migrate to salt water to breed. They can also spend all of their lives in estuarine systems. Their range is everywhere up north from Greenland down to the coast of South America, and they are one entire population. That entire geographic range is one stock, one entire population. And they have a very interesting life cycle. They only spawn once as an adult silver eel, and again, they could be more than 20 years old when they do this. They go down to the Sargasso Sea to spawn. They lay eggs and they die, and they produce a larvae called the leptocephali. The leptocephalus larvae then undergoes metamorphosis, and it turns into a clear critter called a glass eel. And the glass eel gradually gets more and more pigmentation to become a pigmented elver, and moves further upstream into freshwater areas and becomes a yellow eel where it spends the majority of its life. This is a picture of a leptocephalus larvae. They're very flat and willow-shaped. They eat what's known as marine snow, which is the leftover plankton and decaying matter from the water column. They then metamorphose into glass eels. They then gradually have pigments, develop pigments in a particular pattern from the dorsal top of the body to develop a lateral line and gradually down toward the ventral area, and we can stage the pigmentation of the eels in that manner. This is a picture of a yellow eel when the elvers grow up and get a little bit older and bigger, and then when they're an adult, and they're a silver eel just before they migrate downstream to reproduce. They get a darker color, their eyes get bigger, and their ventral areas get shiny. And they don't eat during the time that they migrate, and they fatten up and to their migration route. These are, the landings have declined a lot particularly since the 1980s, and that's the black line here on this graph. And there's been a stock assessment from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and they've determined that the eel stocks are depleted. And they've recently published and produced an Addenda 3 to the Fishery Management Plan that calls for some management action, which includes a larger size limit and a smaller take limit on the fish. One of the things that's part of the management plan is a way to determine recruitment or how many young eels are coming into the system. And every state that's part of the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission has to produce a Young of the Year survey every year. And we do one at the Wartime Wildlife Refuge. This is a fyke net. It consists of, this is a 30-foot wing that hoops down into a trap area with a bag at the end. This is a glass eel with a nickel for a size comparison, and we collect them in buckets and bring them back to our lab where we weigh them, measure them, and stage their pigmentation stages. And this is just a sign from our study area. And just to give you some idea of our area, this is where the breach is right now at Old Inlet, and this is the Carmen's River in Wertheim where our study site is. And after we collect our eels, we keep them alive in buckets, and the next day we bring them up to further upriver to the freshwater site above the dam, the non-tidally influenced site at South Haven County Park. And this is just a diagram of our fyke net. We have the winged area that tapers down to the hoops and then collects into a mesh bag. And this is the size. We have a very tiny, tiny little mesh bag that collects tiny little fish. And here's one of our people collecting the fish from the net. And we just wade down into the river and keep a float on the bucket so it doesn't float away. And these are just a few of our data. We've been doing the study since the year 2000. They come in the spring, so we usually start in late February, early March, and run till late April or early May. 2002 was a fantastic year for eels, and we collected over 13,000 glass eels that year. 2009 was our best year for pigmented eels, and our past 2 years have been pretty good. Also, we've collected over 2,000 eels during our study. And this is just the results of our latest survey. This is just how many eels we caught every week of the survey. We did this survey for 9 weeks. The red are our glass eels, the blue are our older, larger pigmented eels, and we actually collected most of them during the first week of our study. And usually with the pigmented eels, they are usually at stage 1 or 2 earlier on in the season, and later on, toward the end of the season, we collect more of the stage 5 and 6 and more mature eels. This is another graph of our abundance. This is actually the geometric mean catch per hour on the y-axis, and every year we've done it. Again, in 2002, we had a really, really good year, but we've had a pretty good year the past 2 years, which is a good sign. And these are our older elvers. We had a good year in 2002. We had a really good year also in 2009. We seem to have been collecting fewer elvers in the past couple of years. And my talk is short and sweet, and I want to thank a whole bunch of people, and probably a lot I've neglected to mention, and I'd like to know if you have any questions. Thank you. There's
plenty of time for questions.
Bill's got a question.
Is the microphone there?
Hi, I've heard that glass eels are harvested in large numbers and shipped to China and farmed for the sushi industry. Are there any studies regarding the impact on that on the overall adult population, and how we might look there rather than limiting the? I mean, maybe in addition to limiting the the catch numbers and sizes for adults, looking at what's going on with the glassies.
Mm-hmm. Right now, glass eels are only harvested, they're only allowed to be harvested in Maine and in South Carolina, and the really large industry is in Maine, and they are shipped overseas. They're mainly shipped overseas to the aquaculture industry, and they raise them up bigger and then they sell them. And there is an addendum 4 that's out right now with the ASMFC, but they're in, it's still in, going through the process, and there is a proposal to put quotas on the glass eels.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Who's the lucky person that gets to count 13,491 glass eels?
My other biologists and technicians.
The years that you had higher numbers, did those correlate with other locations up and down the coast? Did they also have higher numbers?
I know the past 2 years they've had really good numbers up and down the coast. So yes, they've been, at least in the past 2 years, they've had a very good recruitment generally coastwide.
Is the Carmans River the only place on Long Island in New York where you monitor eels?
It's the only place on Long Island right now that we're monitoring the eels. We're monitoring the glass eels, the juveniles.
Now, is that representative of the other areas? Isn't that representing a bit of an undercount of what could be returning to Long Island waters?
It's a very good site for us to be doing it. It's a very labor-intensive thing. I know that there is some work that's being done up and down the Hudson River, so we have some of their data also to compare that to.
You might have mentioned this, and I missed it early on, but from the Sargasso Sea up to where you're seeing them on the East Coast, these are traveling as glass eels, or are these, how are they getting, what
Yeah,
stage
they're leptocephali for a number of months, and then they metamorphose into glass eels. When by the time they get up to New York, they're between 9 and 12 months old, pretty much.
So is it known how they move up there?
Excuse me, how
Is it
they
known
move
how
up?
they move up?
They come up on the Gulf Stream.
Thanks.
Yeah, Carol, let me add a
Yes.
little bit to that.
Okay.
The movement from the Sargasso Sea is with the currents, with the Gulf Stream currents. And the European eels, the North American eels all use the same method. And it could be from a few months to a couple of years before they come inshore and metamorphose into the glass eels and then come up into the streams.
No, that's the thing. They can breed them once they're glass eels. They can grow them up, but they haven't been able to breed them from an egg. So that's part of the reason why there's such a big market for them in Asia. And another reason is that there's a European eel, and they're not allowed to export them.
Okay, are there any predictions for the recovery? The last 2 years you've had higher increases in glass eels, but that's obviously from breeders from egg laying a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's good, but the problem is they only spawn once, and they could be 20 years old. So we could have a recovery, but it could be 20 years from now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.